I will let my heart be broken because I know it will be put back together again, over and over and over. That song really has been a touchstone for me during these past few weeks as I've watched the calamitous events in the Middle East unfold. It has been a touchstone as I learned of the horrific attack by Hamas on the Israeli people, and a touchstone as I followed the ongoing invasion and humanitarian crisis in the Gaza. A touchstone as the death toll rises. A touchstone as I watch people I love, Jewish Americans, Muslim Americans, Palestinian and Arab Americans, hurting, traumatized, fearful. A touchstone as anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and bigotry rise across the country and in my own communities. I have needed this touchstone in order to continue to bear witness to such horrors and heartaches. I know some of you have a deeper connection than I do to the places and parties in the Middle East. Perhaps you carry stories handed down through your families through your religious upbringing. Perhaps your connection to the Holocaust, the Shoah, the Nakba, Intifada, are deeply personal, their meanings entwined in your identity. I also know that some of you have a deeper understanding than I of Middle East history. Perhaps you have studied the events of the last century as the State of Israel was established in Palestine, providing hope and a homeland for thousands of Jews who survived the Holocaust while displacing thousands of Arabs from their homes. Perhaps you have followed the subsequent recurring violence in the region. In the past few weeks, I've tried to educate myself on this history, and I've come to the realization that there may not be any one definitive, objective history. Rather, there are multiple histories and multiple lenses through which to study them. It is hard to describe the events of the past 6 weeks because the language used to represent Hamas and its actions, the Israeli government and its actions, can easily and inadvertently bias the story, causing pain and ill will. So for now, I will simply say that my heart grieves for all those affected and afflicted. I join people around the world in calling for a ceasefire, humanitarian aid for the hundreds of thousands of displaced Palestinians, and a release of the Israeli hostages. And I pray that somehow, even this violent, dehumanizing history can still lead to a path of peace for this region. As I have listened and studied, I have reached the conclusion that an essential step on the path to peace is to recognize the humanity of every person, to find empathy and compassion for each other across our divisions. Empathy is our ability to care about, understand, and share the experiences of other people. Stanford researcher Jamil Zaki says that when we see and identify with the humanity of those we view as opponents, we recognize what we hold in common. When we recognize what we hold in common, we have a better chance to find more peaceful resolution of our differences. And the best way to build empathy and engage with each other is by sharing our stories. Much the way Common Ground, our grassroots organizing group that we belong to, does. That's how it works. The empathy we develop through listening won't necessarily change what we believe in. And that's okay, but it can cause us to act in accordance with our values toward our fellow human beings. It can allow us to let go of our sense that my view or your view is the absolute truth. As Thich Nhat Hanh says, being caught in our views can be very dangerous and block the opportunities for us to gain a deeper wisdom. Because I do not have a strong personal generational connection with the ongoing conflict, I've been listening to voices of those who do. And I've heard many appeals for empathy and humanity and peace rising up again and again. In a recent interview with Youssef Bashir, a Muslim Palestinian living in the US, his grief and frustration at the ongoing violence was palpable. But he said he holds on to what his father used to tell him. Never let hatred for any people lead you to being unjust to them. Never give up on hope, because to do so is to surrender your humanity. And David J. Cooper, a Bay Area rabbi, says, given the history and generational trauma in the Middle East, it is understandable that both Israelis and Palestinians, and those who support one side or other, have become so callous. I believe that the spiritual and ethical mandate of this moment is to go beyond the understandable. He urges us all to have hesed, or loving kindness, for each other. I also heard an Israeli Arab, Mahrez Inan, describe a vision he had, a vision of everyone crying, all people, all of us crying together. And he said, our tears are healing the wounds from Israelis and Palestinians. Our tears washed the blood. Definitely not to have more weapons or walls. That's the old world. We start the new world. We need to cry that we'll see, and then we'll see the path for peace. I agree with Inan that we need to cry, and to cry we need to be affected by what we witness. We need to allow our hearts to be broken. We need to take action from that place of empathy, to recognize the humanity, the shared desire to thrive of all people, all those caught up in this conflict and touched by it in any way, to call for humanitarian aid and a more peaceful path to this historical enmity, to spread our message of worth and dignity, justice and equity for all people that promotes understanding. I truly believe that our message can make a big and good difference, a Brobignagian difference, as Crystal Largo says. We all need to flex our empathy muscles by continuing to witness the suffering, both around the world and in our neighborhood. If we do this together, and we can take strength from each other, helping to put our broken hearts back together again and again and again. We can remind each other of our need for rest and joy, which fill our capacities to keep our hearts open. We can remind each other of our common values, our principles. And together, we can ground ourselves in our faith in the love that holds and connects us all, and that makes peace a possibility. That faith will bring us back to solid ground. That peace will bring us back to solid ground. May it be so. Amen.